I know, it seems like we just got out of a messy election season. Remember the mudslinging?
The question
Supreme
is,
Court Justice, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
And the attack ads?
Carolyn Long acts concerned.
Herrera butlers with Trump.
We all had that general feeling of, is this ever going to end? Well, funny you should say that. Because it's time for local school board elections, and we've got some candidates stirring up some controversy. And ODOT's been working to cut down thousands of burned trees after last summer's wildfires, which seems simple enough, right? Well, not exactly, at least according to a group of whistleblowers.
Please, I ask you to stop what appears to be fraud and taking advantage of fire victims.
Here's the story. Hello, thank you for being with us. I am Dan Haggerty. This is The Story. It is a Thursday, and it's a pleasure to be hanging out with you on whatever screen you're watching this on. One screen I'd like you to use is the one on your computer or the one on your phone where you can communicate with us. You can use all the info at the bottom of your screen right there. Use the hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. You can email us at thestory@kgw.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on all that stuff. Tell us what you think about the show, what you want us to cover, and we'll do it for you. Let's get started tonight. And we want to go to the big story. And in the big story, I'd like to take you, let's go to school for a moment, all right, and take a little quiz. Question 1, who is the governor? Okay, Kate Brown. I mean, if you're in Oregon, Kate Brown. Good job. I knew you knew that one. Question 2, who is your mayor? I live in Lake O, so I say Joe Buck. Hopefully now you are 2 for 2. You can name our senators, right? Who are our senators? You got it. I know you know that one. All right. Lastly, question number 4, who is on your local school board? Gotcha, didn't I? Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. 3 out of 4 is technically passing, so you're doing well. School board elections often get overlooked. In fact, I think sometimes the importance of that job can be overlooked. Because in communities, big and small, the people who get voted in are often in charge of big-time money and big-time decisions. Here's how our political analyst, Len Bergstein, explained it to me.
By and large, people often think about the big dollar decisions that they make, and they are the ones that have to do with ballot measures for improving existing buildings, new buildings that are going on. If you live in the northwest part of Portland, you see Lincoln High School being almost rebuilt from the ground up. So there are millions and millions of dollars going into construction. So there's just a lot of big dollar decisions made at this almost invisible level of government.
Now, look, I get it. A lot of you at home are saying, Dan, come on, man. I know this stuff. I know how important these races are. I'm active in the community. I read the voter pamphlet. Well, then you should know. You may have to set a little extra time aside to peruse candidates this time around, because regardless of where you live, odds are more people are deciding to run for those seats than you're used to seeing. If you're asking why, well, it's kind of all the reasons that are top of mind. The pandemic, mainly. Topics like, how should schools reopen? How should we handle sports? How should we handle vaccine requirements? How should we address equity? And some of the kids who really need to catch up a lot after what was a tough year for so many of them doing online classes. Lots of people have opinions on this stuff, and lots of people feel compelled to get engaged, which is overall a great thing.
What we're seeing in Oregon is that more people are candidates for this office. There's more people running. There are more contested seats. If you look around the state, there are seats in Lane County, for example, that have never been contested before that they are now. We're getting more diverse candidates attracted to the seats.
Competition, impassioned people, there you have it. Everything's great. Great pool of candidates to help educate our youth. Our youth. Yeah, that's right. This is about kids, our children and their futures. The springboard of education and socialization that will be with them for their entire lives. This is serious stuff. People do not take this lightly. It's big time serious business, and in some cases, it's getting pretty serious. Jeanette Shada, she wants to be on the Beaverton School Board. She has some conservative views on progressive policies. Things like she wants kids back in school full-time, no remote learning. She doesn't want kids to have comprehensive sex education where teachers discuss being gay or being trans. She's against Oregon's critical race theory. If that last one sounds kind of familiar, but you're not quite sure what it is, it was because it did make some national headlines a while back, and it's that training that the Oregon Department of Education uses. They encourage teachers to take this, and it had some controversial lessons, like this one on the screen right now, dismantling racism in mathematics instruction by offering, quote, critical approaches to dismantling white supremacy in math classrooms by visibilizing the toxic characteristics of white supremacy culture. She doesn't think that that makes sense, and says so with triggery buzzwords online, writing things like this, that we should not be teaching self-proclaimed Marxist BLM Inc. materials that Beaverton School District teachers are admittedly using in their classrooms. Look, that's just how politicians talk nowadays, even for a school board. You can't say, I disagree with this, and here is why. Then again, I'm covering it, so joke's on me. Regardless, these are policies that a lot of people are divided on, which is why we vote for these positions. If you like the way she thinks, you vote for her. If you don't, you vote for someone else. But this is Oregon in 2021, so instead, people are protesting against her campaign outside of district headquarters. Other people are showing up to support her, and people are saying people in the crowd, according to police, the crowd was big, about 100 people or so. Some of them had guns. And before you start talking about rights, I get it, but one guy brought a rifle to a district office during a school board meeting. We are looking at a few different districts right now and some of the unique or controversial candidates that are out there. If you have some opinions, some of the races you think we should be paying attention to, the things we should be looking at in this discussion, please let me know. Email us at thestory@kgw.com. You can message us on Facebook or Instagram, or use Twitter in the hashtag HeyDan. And we'll continue to update you on these important races that do often get overlooked. Let's keep talking about controversies, shall we? After all, this is the news, and I have a quota. There's one brewing currently in our forests. You see, after wildfires like the ones we just had, crews, they go in and they cut down all the damaged trees, the ones that didn't fall from the fire or burn up entirely. But some people are claiming that the crews that are in there doing this work are cutting down more than the dangerous trees. Keely Chalmers takes a look at both sides of the issue.
As soon as the flames went out, the destruction was evident. The historic wildfires that swept through Oregon's forest canyons and communities had destroyed hundreds of homes and countless trees. Burned ones lined the highways, as did piles of those already cut down. The state estimates a total of 140,000 hazard trees along highways or on private properties will need to be removed for safety reasons. It is a massive task. So the state brought in contractors to do much of the work. But many now say those firms are doing way more work than they need to by tagging and cutting down trees that are not hazardous.
Good afternoon. I called
the concerns prompted state lawmakers to hold a hearing Wednesday. They heard from both sides, those in charge of cleaning up the debris, and witnesses who say the entire process is a disorganized, unregulated mess.
Because I'm seeing too many trees being cut that are healthy trees.
Gates Mayor Ron Carmichael says he started noticing what he saw as healthy trees being cut last week.
And in some cases, they went back 600 feet off the highway to take out trees and stuff. That's just ridiculous. And clear cutting, just total clear cut.
But others say the problem started much earlier. Tom Ford was the project arborist before he was let go in January. He claims the guidelines for what constituted a hazard tree were never clear.
Unnecessary harvest post-fire is really damaging, and that's where we're still at today.
We were immediately told to say yes, to speed up the process, to mark as many trees as we could in a day.
Eric Phillips also worked on the project. He says what first appeared to be a well-run operation changed.
I was given 50 tags, I think, and the expectation was at least 50 trees per person. And, well, that's when things started to really freak me out.
However, ODOT and the Florida firm hired by the state to run the cleanup maintain they are putting safety first, but are also following FEMA guidelines.
I assure you that there are many layers of accountability and quality assurance that go into this process to ensure that trees will not be uncut will be cut unnecessarily.
If a contractor takes a tree down in error, one that was not marked, we have in our contract a $2,000 per tree penalty that we can enforce.
The question, are too many trees being unfairly marked for removal in the first place? It's a question lawmakers plan to tackle again tomorrow. Keely Chalmers, KGW News.
Okay, what I'm going to say next isn't really news to me or to you, or I don't think anybody in Portland or the surrounding area or anybody watches this newscast. We are battling right now a massive homelessness problem. There are thousands of people sleeping on the sidewalks and in our parks and in broken down cars, but there is some hope on the horizon for more housing options for people in Portland. The city has been under this housing emergency now for more than 5 years, and commissioners voted earlier this year to extend it another year. And this week, they approved some zoning changes that will allow more places for people to camp around the city and to set up more shelters. It's called the Shelter to Housing Continuum Project. We first told you about this last month. It changes city code that regulates where where the people in the city's homeless shelters can actually open them up. And it opens a whole lot more potential space for these shelters to open. It speeds up the permitting process also and waives zoning restrictions. So nonprofits and other agencies can open homeless shelters in more places and do it more quickly. It also legalizes living in RVs and tiny homes on wheels. The state of Oregon considers them vehicles, and you're not technically allowed to live in them according to the state rules in the city, but the city hasn't enforced that rule for years. Now, with this change, people are allowed to live also in an RV or a tiny home, even on a residential property in a residential area. The plan also allows group homes to be built in single-family residential areas. It'll allow groups of people to live together and share common spaces like kitchens and bathrooms in places where they previously couldn't under the code. Now, anytime the city makes changes like this to where homeless shelters can go, there was a lot of pushback. And at first, the plan included allowing homeless camps to set up in parks and other open spaces, and a lot of people did not like that, and the city listened. And they said, let's take that idea off the table. There was also concern that East Portland would bear the brunt of these new shelters because of this map here. This one showed kind of the area for potential new sites. The city says that these maps show the amount of vacant or underutilized land by neighborhood where shelters will be permitted, not where shelters would go. There is more available land in outer East Portland because it has more vacant land and larger parcels. When it comes to implementation, shelters will be focused where there is the greatest need. One thing, though, the plan does not do is actually provide any permanent housing. The city said that this plan is kind of meant to be a first step to start the transition to stable housing, and that they are currently working on building more affordable places to live.
We all know about magic mushrooms, some of us probably more intimately than others, but how many of you know how they actually work and how they'll be used for therapy here in Oregon?
Research on hallucinogens in the setting of mental health is relatively new.
We'll ask a scientist when the story continues.
And it's time to celebrate some birthdays, and we have a very special one, our very own Dan Haggerty. Whoa, 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 whoa. Oh my goodness, we have the wrong photo. I apologize. This is actually Grizzly Adams, who turned 40 when I was in college. Okay, can we make the correction? Let's get the right Dan Haggerty photo up. Celebrating 40 today. Oh, wait a minute. Holy cow, this is Kenny. Now, interestingly enough, some of you have said that our own Dan Haggerty looks like Kenny, or vice versa. Kenny was actually on The Bachelor show. All right, do we have the right one finally? Yes, here he is, our very own KGW's Dan Haggerty, celebrating 40 years old. But here's what's curious. I'm 59. Does Dan really look 19 years younger than me? I'm pretty sure we got the age right. I thought he was older. No, happy birthday, Dan. From all of us here at KGW, thanks for being part of our team. We love having you around. The big 4-0, Dan Haggerty.
Okay, there's a little surprise. I didn't know that was coming. Rod Hill making a little The Story appearance. That's great. You're right. I do. Well, I am 40. I look 50. I feel 60. So, you know, It's just I'm enjoying multiple decades all at the same time. Rod, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. And for my producers and everybody else for sneaking that in. I'm 40. I'm okay. I'm dealing with it. I'm fine. I've been looking through some of your emails and your tweets, stuff like that during the break. Keep sending me those ideas that you have on the different school districts and the people who are running and the controversies and what you want to learn about your areas. These are big time important races and we want to hear about them. So use that hashtag HeyDan. Hit us up on Twitter, any of the social platforms. We'll see what we can do for you. Now, if you are new to this show, you should know that we really do listen to your feedback. It drives our coverage every night. And you have any criticism, and I know you do, I'm all ears. For example, I got this tweet a couple of nights ago from Karen. Hey Dan, after tonight's episode, I was left incomplete on 2 stories that could have used some Southwest Washington updates, along with just Portland, Oregon statewide closures and real IDs. Feels like a 15-second, hey, Southwest Washington, your status is still ... or will change if. Would have been nice. Karen, I love the way you put that. So first of all, good point. You're right. Sometimes, a lot of times, we're a little too Portland, a little too Oregon-centric. We shouldn't be. So let's start with those 2 topics that you brought up. First, Washington, when it comes to the phases, which is what they call them. They use phases instead of risk levels like we do in Oregon. Next Monday, the state will decide if any of those phases need to be rolled back. And based on this map, it looks like that could happen in a lot of counties. Everywhere that is red, that means that they have too many cases of COVID right now to stay in the current phase that they are in. That includes Clark and Skamania County, but not Cowlitz right now. We're going to have to wait and kind of see what happens. You also asked the status about real ID in Washington. Well, that's easy. It's basically the same as in Oregon and everywhere else in the country. You can get your real ID at the DMV right now, but the feds are also additionally giving us that 2 extra years before you will need the real ID or a passport to get on a plane for a domestic flight. But if you live in Washington, it is possible you already have one and may not know it. You know those Washington enhanced driver's licenses that you can use to cross the Canadian border instead of a passport? Those actually count as a real ID. So there you go. Thanks for calling us on our coverage. Now, this next story is mostly Oregon-focused, at least for now. And I'm sure all of you know that we became the first state to legalize psilocybin, aka magic mushrooms, for regulated therapy purposes. But since us Northwest states kind of like to do things together, Washington could be next. There's been a push to legalize magic mushrooms in the state, specifically for end-of-life care. And at the same time, wow. Is that my 40-year-old brain, or was there a glitch in the matrix there for a moment? They really wanted to run those commercials. It was important that you saw those, but it's also important that you hear this story. We were talking about legalizing magic mushrooms or psilocybin and the possibility of that happening in Washington. So shall we continue? There is a push to legalize magic mushrooms in the state of Washington, specifically for end-of-life care. At the same time, there's this initiative in the city of Spokane to decriminalize them. So we're going to keep an eye on all of this. Meanwhile, in Oregon, a state board currently is trying to figure out exactly how to regulate them, which is going to take some time. About 2 years after it is passed, 2 years from now, we'll know. And they'll know when you can finally use them in the way that you're intended to use them. It can only be used in a licensed therapeutic setting with a professional. You can't like buy it at the store, take them home, use them that way, or grow them yourself. The idea is to treat people with mental health conditions like depression or anxiety. So exactly how does that work, scientifically speaking? We asked a psychology instructor who specializes in neuroscience at Oregon State University, and he says the research is still pretty new, but what they've seen so far is promising.
The studies absolutely are showing that just 1 or 2 experiences with psilocybin can create long-lasting decreases in anxiety and improvements in other mental illness symptomology for weeks and months afterwards, right? So the thing that's really interesting and great about these drugs is that they're really different from a traditional antidepressant like an SSRI, like Prozac, where you have to take it every single day. This is literally you take a few experiences, 1 or 2 or 3 experiences, and it can have long lasting effects. There's at least some research, or at least a few researchers that are trying to get at more about what is it about the experience of being high that really does this. And some of them are really focusing on this this experience of being part of a bigger whole, right? This experience of being interconnected, this experience of awe, of realizing like how small my life is compared to the universe, and feeling that interconnected, like I'm part of it all, right? And instead of just being some sort of like crazy hallucinatory state that's really fun and interesting, it seems to be something that is that creates a deep meaningfulness.
I mean, this is really progressive stuff, as you can tell. And this is ground zero for the research that's being done and that they hope is going to help people save lives as well. So, look, if you have any questions about psilocybin, about magic mushrooms, and how they're going to be utilized in this state under this program, please let us know. Use the hashtag HeyDan. We'll try and get you some answers. I'm going to read some comments as we finish the story right after this. Now take commercials. All right, before we go tonight, I want to give a little shout out to moms and remind everybody Mother's Day is May 9th. That is a week from Sunday. Don't panic. Just start thinking about it. You still got time. And it's not just a PSA that I'm telling you right now. It's also a tie-in to our last story. See, a big resource in Portland for moms and women struggling with homelessness and addiction is growing, but they need some help. Good thing Mother's Day is such a great time to give, right? Here's Maggie Vespa.
Believe it or not, in Portland, with its monumental housing crisis, there is only one day shelter for women and their children. It's called Rosehaven. It operates out of a church basement at Northwest 18th and Gleason. During the pandemic, staff greet clients outside, a stark contrast to the past when they only took to the streets for celebrations. This is video from 2018 of Raining Roses, a Mother's Day parade and party that serves as the shelter's big annual fundraiser. This year, that parade will be socially distanced, and the fundraiser more crucial than ever. After more than a decade in their really discreet home in Northwest Portland, Rosehaven is moving. That said, their new spot is just a short walk away. To prove it, I grabbed a GoPro and made that walk. 2 blocks to Northwest 18th and Gleason.
We are standing in our brand new home.
This is, in true Portland fashion, a former coffee shop and warehouse.
This affords us 3 times the amount of space.
Katie O'Brien is Rosehaven's executive director. She says the upgrade is overdue. Pre-pandemic, the need for their services was rising at least 10% every year. Now, rates of homelessness and domestic abuse are skyrocketing, and staff are bracing for a tidal wave. That in mind, renovations here will be very specific.
Everything is being looked at through a trauma-informed lens, and how much we can spread people out, how people can have better private conversations. What is noise like? What is lighting like?
And of course, that will take money. Rosehaven is hoping to raise $3 million to move into this space come January. They're kicking off that campaign with this year's Raining Roses event. You can give online or sign up to walk in that Mother's Day parade. If you do, you'll see current and past clients like Cody Jane Baker. She came to the shelter 5 years ago struggling with alcoholism. Now she's sober, working, and excited to see Rosehaven grow.
It's mind-boggling. It's mind-blowing. I'm so proud of what they've been able to accomplish. If you need help, they'll help you.
Maggie Vespa, KGW News.